has passed. So just before we get started, because tonight we're going to be covering a very topical subject, and that is Trump versus Biden, but really focusing on the financial consequences as opposed to getting in too deep into the politics. I'll get into the politics of the financial side, but we're going to be discussing the financial implications of what I believe to be one of the most important elections globally in the world. So we're going to jump straight into that. Firstly, just before we get started, thanks to everybody. I'm glad that you really liked the IMF formats that we had last week. If you haven't watched that video yet, it got a lot of attention. We had so far over 160,000 views, which is great. So just want to thank everybody for liking, for sharing. It's really great to see that this many people are finally interested in what used to be a very geeky subject. Now it's actually really interesting to more people, but I think we can do a lot better. I think we need millions of people viewing these videos. So just before we get started on Trump versus Biden, the financial consequences, I'd really appreciate it if you could like this video, if you could share this video, and why don't you participate in the live chat, because Azad is there, and he's going to be picking out the questions for the AMA based upon those. So let us know what you'd like to cover before we go deep into the topic. Also, a couple of things, a couple of updates, I guess, from the market, just not related to the political side, but there was a big announcement. Bitcoin's up today on the news that PayPal has finally decided that they're going to get on board the Bitcoin gravy train. They're going to be allowing for buying and selling of Bitcoin within PayPal. Interestingly, PayPal was one of the companies covered when I wrote the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust, as an early pioneer in digital money. But obviously Bitcoin is so different to that. And it's great to see that PayPal is actually joining that. A few more videos that we're going to do for next week. We're actually going to be covering the difference between the gold standard and the Bitcoin standard, and which one and what the differences are and what you need to understand about those. Remember that you can actually subscribe to get a notification for a video. You can head over to those videos. We're also talking about the impact in about 2 weeks after this one of large corporations getting involved. So welcome PayPal. The great thing about Bitcoin is anyone can be involved. It really doesn't care what race, color, corporation, entity, government, central bank, whatever you are, people can decide to get involved in it at different stages. Also, a very quick reminder of the importance of not leaving your Bitcoin and crypto at exchanges. OKX, one of the oldest exchanges, unregulated exchange based in China, they suspended withdrawals. And another quick reminder that these exchanges are banks. They can do what a bank can do. They can, when you deposit your money with the bank becomes a legal owner of your money. They can spend it as they choose, and they can rehypothecate it and make more money just based upon holding it at that bank. The same can happen with crypto exchanges. Do not get confused between crypto exchanges and Bitcoin itself. It's okay to go in and out of these exchanges. They're providing onboarding, but you don't really want to be storing at these exchanges. You just hold them there. So they've suspended withdrawals, and it's just a quiet reminder of using crypto the way that it was actually designed.
What's going on? How you doing?
If you are not ready to hold it and store your own keys, then remember that you want to go with a custodian that's got kind of due process, some regulations around it, because if you are going to relinquish control of your crypto, then make sure that it's got the correct regulatory setup. And you're looking for a custodian and other legal relationships as well, so that you don't just get these switches off. So I'm sorry if anyone's affected by OKX, but if anyone's been watching the channel, you'll know that you don't need to be involved in these crypto exchanges. There's much smarter.
How you doing? I'm vibing. I'm good. I'm good. How you doing? How you feeling? How are things?
Without actually having to be a trader. And most people lose money trading, and then they end up with money on an exchange as well. So just always a reminder. But let's get straight into the topic of today, which is Trump versus Biden, the financial consequences of the election. So, firstly, my observations about the market right now. if you're listening to the news now, obviously, Trump is not liked by the media, so it's very hard if you're watching traditional media to actually get a real general decision or gathering on what's going to happen. But everything on the traditional media and everything we're seeing is that Biden is way ahead, allegedly. But I guess we saw that last time with Trump.
I actually have a goal
in the last election as well, coming from
just keeping track
out of nowhere. But Biden is taking the lead, and I believe that most investors are preparing for Biden to actually be the next president of the United States. So that's where we're at right now. But when we're looking at the financial implications, we're trying to actually gauge what the financial markets are telling us. And unfortunately, we used to have market-driven economics. And that was, you could look at the market as a leading indicator for the economy. But now we don't have market-driven economics. We have crony capitalism driven economics that are mainly driven by the Fed and central banks. So we have central bank driven markets, and central banks and politicians need to make sure that just before the election, the stock market needs to be at all-time highs, and all-time highs at the same time as one of the worst economies that we've seen on the back of this pandemic. So you've got to read a little bit deeper, and that's what we want to cover here today, how to read between the lines and see a little bit further than how you would normally read the markets leading up to elections. So the reason I believe that the market is also backing up that Biden is going to be the next president, or the market thinks that it is right now, that can all change, is also because my belief about the type of markets that we are in right now. So
when I go to the gym, I just look and smell.
If you've watched previous videos,
talked
about different scores.
Yeah, I've set
and how that impacts you as an investor.
Set routine.
And what to expect when you're watching the news of how the different types of announcements.
Sorry, I don't know why it's lagging.
To get out of this economy.
That's too bad.
So, a Democratic,
I have a fan right on my
Labour left-wing, opinion about becoming the next president, and the next 4 years are going to be a Democratic-led president. Really, you can, you can look at the markets.
So
and say what the market's
bench press,
saying right now.
bicep curl, fly,
well, normally,
incline bench press,
Biden was about to win,
leg raises,
if we were in
nunchucks, and
market
exercise
economics, and we weren't in crony capitalism.
So I'll do some flies now.
And leading up to the election, they try and make sure that the markets are actually up so that it looks good, so that Trump can go out and say, the markets are all-time high, where everything's great, everything's going to turn around. Normally, if Trump was going to be winning, you would expect good markets. But because we're under a crony capitalism system, because we don't no longer believe in free markets, and our governments don't believe in free markets, under capitalism, it would normally be very bad if Biden was winning. This would be a negative side for the markets. So if a Democratic government was about to win the election, you'd expect a big market correction, and it's normally bad for the markets. But that's not what we're seeing right now. The reason for that is obviously under a Republican or a right wing or a more conservative approach, you would expect less tax. And when you expect less tax, you'd expect the market, the companies, to have higher retained profits. If they're paying less tax, then that's normally good for the markets. That means that they have more reserves to pay out in dividends, which means that more institutional and retail people start investing in stocks, and you normally have higher prices if the Republican Party is going to win. So if we are in normal economies, the market's telling us that Trump is going to actually win. But the reason that I think the markets are actually saying that Biden's going to win is because of the fact that markets are at high, even though we're in a completely manipulated Federal Reserve-driven stock market. So the other reason why normally the markets would be doing well is because you'd expect, under a Republican win, under a more right wing, not only would you expect less tax, but you'd also expect less regulation, which leads to more efficient businesses and more retained profits and more dividends, and therefore more participating in the markets. But what we're seeing right now is that the reason I think that this is signaling the market's been doing well during these economic troubles is because the economics do not match the markets. The figures are really not matching that the stock market should be at these levels. We should, under normal conditions, see significant corrections in the stock markets. Because normally the left winning is, as we said already, bad for markets, bad for the stock markets, because you'd expect higher taxes, less profits, less dividends, more regulations, and therefore you'd have less companies IPOing, and it would be normally a negative symbol. But when you get a left in the current market, if you get a left wing, if you get a more democratic win, stimulus bills become easier. So if you look at the Biden policies, it's all about, we need to increase taxes. We need to do more. We need to spend more. We need to give more. We need to take on more debt. And we need to do, more enhanced lockdown, more stricter measures so that we can actually have more stimulus bills. And so if you are trading the market based upon your belief about the likelihood of a stimulus bill getting through, then you would want Biden to win and you'd want this to move to a more democratic election process and a more democratic government, because it's a lot easier to get the stimulus bill through. So you have more central bank-based markets. Now, because we are in a market which is driven by the central bank pumping out quantitative easing, and companies borrowing cheap money, and more stimulus so that people can actually continue to inflate assets under crony capitalism. Therefore, a strong market with a bad economy is, to me, signaling that the market believes that Biden is going to become the next president, because institutional investors have now decided that, based on the fact that we are in a Federal Reserve-led market, the markets are no longer subject to economics, fundamentals, real figures. Therefore, they're pushing for a central bank-based market. So the institutional money is not leaving the market. Institutional investors are remaining in stock markets despite the economics, because they believe that the smart money believes that we are headed to a more socialist economy. So we are headed for the United Socialist States of America, according to the markets. Institutional investors want to see more Fed, they want to see more stimulus, and they want to see their stocks going higher. They want their asset prices to continue to push this rich-poor divide, so that they don't lose any money. We don't have any deflation in asset prices. We just have inflation in prices and inflation in assets, so that the rich can get richer, the rich-poor divide can continue. And ironically, that's exactly what's not meant to happen under a democratic government. It's meant to be taxing the rich in order to redistribute to more even equality. But what we're seeing under crony capitalism is that the markets do better under socialism, because at this stage, everyone's just realized the markets are not the markets. Institutional investors stay in because it's not about dividends. It's not about profit. It's about stimulus. So if we can have more stimulus, the markets are seeing that as a good signal, and therefore the markets now are looking at a more movement towards socialism, and it doesn't really matter about earnings, it's all about stimulus. So this, to me, is more of an indication that socialism is the new flavor of the United States of America, and that is more global. Now, let's tie this into what we covered last week. So last week, again, if you haven't watched it, head over to my YouTube channel, Simon Dixon, hit subscribe on that button while you're there, because I've got really packed events that we'll be doing in future broadcasts. Next one will be covering the monetary renegotiation, whether we move to a gold standard or a Bitcoin standard, what the differences are, which ones are more likely, which ones aren't going to happen, and we'll be covering that, and also the impact of all these large corporations sucking up lots of Bitcoin, more PayPal getting involved, and more public companies actually deciding to hold some of their results in Bitcoin. We'll be discussing that. So last week we covered the real meaning behind the IMF announcement, and it was a massive bomb that was dropped upon us. And I also went on upon that. Tomorrow you can look forward to the Gyges report coming out on RT. I gave some commentary on that, so that will be coming out. I had a bit of Max Gyges and Stacey Herbert humor to more of my dry humor commentary, but I like to keep it, it's always good. So you can see that in the Gyges report coming out tomorrow. And I'll make sure that we upload that to our YouTube channel, so all the more reasons to say subscribe so that you can get those notifications, and we can get more and more content going. Now, tying it into what we covered next week, so the IMF, if you didn't see the video, the TLDR is that the IMF is calling for Bretton Woods 2. Now, the IMF is as well a socialist movement. So the International Monetary Fund calling for Bretton Woods 2 is another indication that the markets don't want capitalism, they want stimulus-led economies. And so the IMF coming out and timing their call for Bretton Woods 2 is good for the IMF if we get a democratic win here. And so that is another indication to me that the IMF is calling for a Biden win, so that they can get and move forward their IMF socialist agenda. I talked a lot about what they were talking about and what it actually means. So just a little bit of a recap. Bretton Woods was a meeting that happened in 1944. It was John Maynard Keynes, an English economist, that believes, if you've watched previous videos, we don't actually have Keynesian economics. A lot of people attribute the state we're in to Keynesian economics, but Keynesian economics always said that you should borrow and make up for demand, the government should make up for demand in bad times, and then they should repay their debt and cool down the economy in good times, but the repaying bit never happens, so we never actually get Keynesian economics. But Keynesian was proposing a private currency called Bancor, which would act as a world reserve currency issued by world reserve banks. And that was in 1944. He came along to push that agenda. He wanted to essentially free governments of the discipline of gold. So prior to this 1944, governments couldn't really take on excessive levels of debt. So in order to actually do that, because most people are horrified by these new currencies and governments just printing them directly or releasing them into the market directly, they had to create the central banking system, and that started in the UK in about 1694 when Patterson actually created a proposal that they pitched this private bank called the Bank of England, and they put together a whole process by which they could pretend, the governments could say, we're not printing money, but they gave the charter to the Bank of England to create that money, and then they could pretend that they were borrowing it and paying interest, but really we just had this central banking system emerge. More of that in future videos, we can cover that as well. Bit of a diversion. But Keynes wants to they wanted in Bretton Woods to free governments of the discipline of gold, because gold was a sort of regulator of the system, whereby if governments took on too much excessive bad policies, they would end up losing all their gold supplies, and the market would get fearful around that. They'd end up with bank runs and all sorts of stuff. And so they were unable to fund socialism. So Bretton Woods was the gradual movement, not spooking people into communist Marxist economists, not spooking the capitalists, but a more slower, gradual movement. And the capitalists can sign up for it because, as we see today, perfect example, capitalists then end up pushing for socialism, as we are seeing today, because it affects their actual value of their assets and more stimulus. In 1970, the IMF created the special drawing rights as the indication to try and get their first, global digital currency, and get their members to back it, whereby loans that they made out to all these different people were backed by taxpayers. So all of the member states, they would guarantee these ginormous loans. Crony capitalism would benefit from that. And if it all went wrong, then the taxpayer would just end up paying it, because the taxpayer, the governments were guaranteeing those loans based upon collecting more tax in the future. And so this gradually moves towards increasing tax, increasing tax, increasing tax. And the IMF is essentially the conduit for getting out those ginormous loans. But remember, they're not, they call them aid packages. They're not aid packages. It's pushing debt onto different markets, getting those bigger loans. So in 1971, the Nixon shock happened, which made the US dollar debt standard that we moved to the backing of the world, and the gold was officially removed as a regulator of governments, and we moved to the fiat-based Ponzi scheme that we live in today.
Yo, Alvaro, what's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
Just
finished working out? No way, that's awesome.
The World Bank.
That's
so
hilarious.
More indication, which is why the Federal Reserve is the conduit, the system to get the funds into the IMF and the World Bank. They're one of the largest funder, so that we can move and gradually move towards a socialism, but all under, we are a capitalist.
Yo, Alvaro, what's up, man? Like right now, that's jokes.
Pretense
How you doing,
of having
buddy?
a capitalist system was siphoning off all
It's gonna be a
of
short
the
stream today.
guarantees of U.S. taxpayers.
I gotta go
in
in
case
like
any of those loans go
5
wrong.
minutes or so.
And remember, all of
I
that
might
is
do a few
backed
more
by
workouts.
banks actually creating money out of nothing.
How you doing, man?
Based upon the promise
How
of
was
the
your
central
workout?
banks to be the lender of last resort, where those banks hold less than 1% in reserves, and most of it in assets and securities, and those securities are loans to the government.
I'm gonna have to go
So this
pretty
is how
soon,
the
man.
whole Ponzi
It's
scheme,
my sister-in-law's
fits
wedding
together,
today, or
which
wedding,
is essentially
birthday, so
created
I gotta go
nothing,
shower up and
lent
see
to
her
the
in like 5
government,
minutes.
and then they're siphoned off through the IMF. And
Yo,
the
I'll show Alvaro my nunchuck skills I've learned, buddy.
And there's example after example.
You should get a
of,
pair, man.
disastrous
It's a lot easier than it
consequences
looks.
over time, leading to more bailouts and too big to fail financial institutions pushing the taxpayers to guarantee all these loans, as we've seen time and time again. And when they can't repay the interest, they simply just issue new loans, roll over the debt, and then it has to be repaid plus interest. So it's no surprise that it's inevitable, predictable, and guaranteed, as I talked about in the book, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future, Before Governments Go Bust, that we can stop pretending that we're ever going to repay that debt, because that would be the largest depression that we've ever seen in the economy. So the IMF, but getting back to the IMF and the World Bank and their call for Bretton Woods 2, they want to step in and they want to save the world. They want to be the saviors of the world. They want to, but they only get to do it if you have lots of social unrest and financial disaster. So we are in the perfect environment for calling out for Bretton Woods.
My dad has nunchucks. Nice, dude. You should do it, dude. It's illegal. Good, bro.
And it is the
Sick,
social
yo. Thanks,
unrest
man.
that is the stimulus for trying to get something through. Why?
Dude,
because
it's
then,
such a
if you
workout.
can
The
get to
nunchucks,
democratic
I incorporate into
government,
my ab
the
workout.
democratic government,
Calm
and
down, Bruce Lee.
everybody
All right.
pushing for more stimulus under times
Oh,
when
Bar, you're the man,
the
dude.
economy is under, real
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
desperate
leave soon,
measures,
though, homie.
then you can get a lot more of these IMF stimulus packages through, and potentially
Whew.
a monetary renegotiation.
How you doing, man?
Talking will be coming.
Oh,
on my
I
YouTube
lowered
channel
my
for
bench
many,
press
many
weights
years
by
now.
about 20 pounds.
And so Bretton Woods is called for, and all the central bank digital
I find
currencies
it's
that I've talked
my
about in
weight is a
previous
lot
videos
better. I
is
feel a
gonna be
lot better
part
at
of
this.
that,
I reduced 20
monetary
pounds and feeling
renegotiation.
just
I'll
a
cover
lot
more
easier.
about that in future
It's cool.
videos.
Nice, man.
And
Thanks,
really, this becomes
For
the
going?
central bank digital
Laura.
currencies and global
Yo,
central bank
World
digital
Series
currencies
and
becomes the bailout mechanism
NBA
for all of the
champs.
distressed
Elvira
banks
in the
that I'm
house.
forecasting we're going to
LA,
see
man.
as a result, as all of some of
LA's
these
the place to be,
measures
man.
actually get rolled
Congrats,
out
man.
into lockdown 2 and everything else that's happening. So, Trump is very bad for the IMF. I believe under all of this, the IMF are calling for a Biden win, and that's reflected in the market that that's what might happen, and therefore how the US people vote is going to have significant impact on the monetary renegotiation ahead. This is why voting left versus right, Democratic versus Republican, becomes one of the most biggest financial decisions.
Dude, I might do.
And why the upcoming election
451.
is going to be.
I haven't listened in a while. I'm doing good because I started a new diet in my family. You less me more veggies, dude. It's good. Not vegan, vegetarian. Nice, man.
Is going to be negotiating the monetary renegotiation. The U.S. is the incumbent. They have all the power. They have.
That's good, man. And I'm on the way now.
In terms of adoption, with 70% of all currency in US dollars in terms of value, and 50% of all global transactions happening in dollars. And if you're holding fiat currency, dollars is the one that most people want to hold.
Once a week. Oh, that's good, dude. Yeah, dude, that's good. It's good to get protein in like that.
Obligations.
It's good, man. I'm happy for you, dude.
In the currency where you
okay, I'm gonna do a few more leg raises and maybe one more bench and maybe one more bicep curls, and then I gotta go with friends.
And that's exactly what we'll be covering in the 4-part video series that is getting closer and closer to being released. I actually saw the first draft today. Azad's been pushing those through, and really excited about bringing those to you. So remember, as investors, if you want to be ready for these different implications, we can speculate what the market's telling us, whether we're going to have a Democratic or whether we're going to have a Republican win, but we also want to be ready for either outcome, and that's what I'll be covering in the 4-part video series. If you'd like to actually get priority notification to that, head over to www.retirementplanb.com and you can pre-register there.
Put a creatine on the way. So buy me stream will show you what it takes. Sick, buddy. That's awesome, man.
How you as an investor can start to think about these different scenarios, and I'm even going to put $1 million of my personal savings on the line.
Cool, man. Sounds good,
actually make those investments.
You delete your social media.
What
why?
I'm doing with my money as well. So I'll be putting my money where my mouth is. So this is really, really important. The outcome of that. If you want the IMF to push through their central bank digital currencies, then I believe the IMF will be calling for a Biden win. If you want more of a US dollar standard and pushing the US dollar debt-based standard further, and more of a US dollar-backed central bank digital currency rather than the global central bank digital currency, then Trump moving into that negotiation with the IMF.
Okay, one more set of leg raises and one more bench.
In Bretton Woods 2 is going to be a harder negotiation to push that through and end up with a global central bank digital currency. And you might end up with just a failed experiment like you saw with special drawing rights. But this election really is going to turn it. And if you're listening to the markets, as I've said, it looks like we're going to go for Biden. If we get Biden, that's going to be pushing for more stimulus. If we push for more stimulus, the ultimate stimulus is the IMF. The IMF is calling for Bretton Woods 2. Bretton Woods 2 will be a central bank digital currency on a global scale, and we've covered in many, many different videos on this YouTube channel the implications that has for your personal freedoms, your liberties, and privacy. So I think this is a great time now. How are we doing for time? We are exactly on the halfway mark. So the other half we'll just cover and we'll do the AMA. So Azad, hopefully that's led to more questions. And just before we take those questions,
one more bench set and then I'm done.
We want to see more people getting a different alternative perspective.
Saw a documentary, gave me saw reason to read it. Honestly, don't want post on it, so I just said bye to it. Oh, that's okay.
As an investor,
that's okay, man.
New investor, there's going to be
I can't do that because then I'll lose contact with my friends, you know what I mean, and family. A lot of my friends and family use it.
Please do like this video. That helps YouTube. Give us some more love.
I think it's a pretty good platform, like Facebook, whatever.
Algorithms, and we can push for millions of views rather than the hundreds of thousands of views.
Person to person, right?
Been getting recently.
Oh, like one more event
really happy about.
Like some people have some stuff, other people have other stuff.
It's been really,
like
really
I don't really use Instagram. I don't like the interface of Instagram. I don't think
let's get that up to the
it optimizes video footage, and I don't think it optimizes image footage.
Well, we have over 700 people.
That was one reason. No way, get out of here.
Thank you.
Dude, that's the elephant in the room, man. Nobody says it. I have
well,
Instagram just because everyone else has Instagram,
There's
man.
a lot of debate. This is a very heated subject.
The image quality and the video quality are just, it's...
one that I think is
It should just be...
interesting.
It's old script, it's old
wins,
technology.
what's going to happen
Okay, one more
to
bench set.
capitalism?
I gotta
I'm not
run
sure
though,
if you
man.
answered that already,
Gotta
Simon,
go.
but,
Capitalism is so. This was covered in previous videos, but we might as well return that. So, the only hope for capitalism is that we enter into one of the worst depressions that we've ever seen. Because the inevitability of the current system that we have can only drive you to socialism, and it's the infinite end result of where we end up.
You know at the end of a, you know at the end of a workout,
when
your last set just feels good, you know.
And then 100%.
Oh, that was nice.
You know, negative interest.
I think you lifted my spirits up, Bar. You lifted me up, homie.
A more totalitarian serfdom,
Bench press.
you know, communist style for every country. That's the inevitable. If you want a monetary reform, then we have to have a dire depression, and we have to move
man.
to a
I'm
more
gonna go. Gotta go.
Austrian economist style of philosophy. Now,
Gotta go,
what
man.
that would mean is that you need to push
I
interest
felt good right
rates
now.
up under the existing
Nice, man. Yo, let me show you something. I might wear it later tonight playing GoldenEye, but this is what it was probably. Let me show you.
You need to see a contraction in the money supply and a deleveraging of the economy. And so if we move to a more Austrian capitalist style of economy right now, in the current situation that we're in, it will be disastrous short term, and even quite long term, because we have kicked this can down the road and really pushed the nail in the coffin of capitalism over decades and decades of stimulus and through crony capitalism and the fact that the government decided to outsource the private creation of money to the private banking sector. So Trump is not going to elect for pushing up interest rates, contracting the money supply, so therefore, right or left, I don't think it will get capitalism either way. So that's why the institutions are saying, well, if we're not going to have capitalist markets anymore, we might as well vote for socialism, because socialism is producing these great markets at the moment. And what an irony in this hybrid system as we move towards greater and greater taxation in order to keep asset prices.
I have a gym, I'm tired of Goku, get out of here. It's annoying. It's like I'm shooting nobody? Whoa. Really? You really feel that, homie? Got mad?
Thank you for that. So,
my only viewer is a bot?
We've got a couple of
when are you
people
streaming, buddy?
in the room who believe you're a socialist. Do you have a quick answer for that?
I'm usually in there, buddy. Like when I see you online, I'm in there, man.
I really am way more aligned.
Depends on the game too. I'm good with them, man. Sick. Oh, yo, thanks, buddy.
I don't like to
thanks,
talk
man.
about theoretical situations. Of if we were starting our economy
thanks a lot, buddy.
Scratch,
yo, I'm always in there when you're streaming, man.
I subscribe to Austrian economics in that sense.
Today, nice.
Next week we'll be
I gotta go see my sister-in-law for her birthday, but I'll be on later. I'll probably see you later, hopefully.
But if we want to move
really?
Towards,
yeah, man, I'm always in there,
if we
homie.
want to look at where we are today,
what was I gonna say?
I believe in competing currencies.
Depends on the game you play too, though, man.
Outside of the financial system,
even if I stream like
financial systems like
Far
Bitcoin,
Cry,
and fiat money is just the writings on
anything
the wall.
HD. Even Grand Theft Auto, like people, they don't really watch. I don't know. Just GoldenEye people watch that. That's weird. That maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know, man. You have a big following from CS, man.
Because you can't.
I guess you're also playing a new game too.
In the current environment we have.
Exhausted cleaning. That's
the implications of that is we would have
dude, I gotta go though, man. I really do have to go.
Depression that you've ever seen.
Dogger was saying, yeah, man, like he's seen Minecraft. He gets like 2 or 3 views, unfortunately. I'm watching it. I'm watching you.
Like to see a movement towards that. Well, I'll be
but you know, you gotta build the community, I guess, whatever Minecraft thing is. You know, he also has to, you know, he'll probably get a good time soon.
I sit somewhere, you know, I don't believe that the market can take care of
games like playing.
I'm not a full-blown
I gotta go, man. Thanks, buddy.
I believe that there are some functions
the best Albara,
and the private sector doesn't do everything perfectly.
Goku. Albara Goku.
Yeah, definitely not pushing for a socialism. I'm just a realist and I'm an investor, and so no matter what my ideology is, I'll be looking